Today I'm drinking water.
Bruh.
What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Quick thing, I'm going to be uploading from now on Tuesdays and Thursdays my normal videos, and on Saturday and Sundays at 8:30 a.m. I will be streaming. I'm gonna test out the schedule for a little while and see if it sticks. Hope you guys like it. Anyways, in today's video we have an old video for you. So this is a classic. So back in this video, I said...
Joe Kelly has a new series coming out.
Yeah, he does. It's going to be lit.
Co-Jelly.
Co-Jelly.
We call it Co-Jelly's story time.
Yeah, that I don't want to spoil too much about it, but that's
It's going to be a good one.
You guys
It's going to be a good one.
You guys are going to like it.
Yeah, so as you saw, Dakota and I said that there was a new series coming out, and Joe had a new series specifically, Joe's Story Time. And so what we're going to be watching today is our first attempt at making that a series. So as you guys will be able to see, the video is pretty bad. If I could redo it today, I would have two different camera angles. I would have one focused on Joe while he's reading the story and another on the audience and to get their reactions as he reads it. So that's something I would change about it. Also, I would have everybody have their own mics because everybody was just recorded off the camera mic at the time, and you'll be able to hear it's pretty shitty quality, but I thought this was interesting. I edited it slightly and you guys are gonna check it out. Let me know what you guys think by leaving a comment down in the description. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel and follow me on all my social medias. Join the Discord server. I try to play games with all my subscribers, and you guys could hop on my live streams if you want on the weekends. So yeah, guys, I hope you guys enjoy the video. Let me know what you think about it, and I will see you guys in the next one. So see you then.
What's up? This is Joe, and we're starting off a new series. It's going to be reading fanfics. Unfortunately, I know. Today, we got this awesome one picked out by our producer, Devin. It's called Root Her. And what it is, it's a little adaptation of Jurassic Park. Root Her by Michael Collins. Awesome. Robert Muldoon was not a man to be trifled with. For years, he had plied his trade as a big game hunter in Kenya, utilizing every scrap of his savage cunning and imposing physical frame, as well as his arsenal of highly explosive weaponry, to outsmart, outmaneuver, and out-explode some of the mightiest and most dangerous creatures known to nature. He was normally as patient as a stone and would spend hours, even days at a time, rooted to the spot, silently waiting for his quarry to show up, so he could decorate his lion skull cabin with more lion skulls. Nonetheless, today his patience was wearing thin. It's this bloody island, he thought to himself, ever since he accepted the job at InGen working at the new tourist attraction. He'd been effectively confined to the role of construction overseer, an occupation wholly at odds with his hands-on, heads-off personality, and he couldn't deny he was beginning to feel restless. Just as he was contemplating a change of career, his self-reflection was cut off by a loud metallic clang as the final pylon was hauled into place atop the heavy-duty maximum security enclosure being erected behind it, reminding him that it had been a long, long time since he'd been involved in erections of a more personal nature. Absently, he adjusted his crotch as he picked up his radio and signaled to the foreman that the enclosure was ready for its occupants. Hoisting himself up onto a platform above the solid metal gate, he looked out over the large tropical forest surrounding him and began to wait for the transport cage to arrive. The forest itself was a lush green palm variety, normally associated with small islands located off to the coast of Costa Rica, and was superbly lit by a completely dark night sky, almost as if some celestial lighting assistant had a hand in it somehow. "Hola, Senor Muldoon," one of the workers called up to him as they passed by. Muldoon peered at him, trying to make out who it was. Oh yes, he thought it, as recognition set in. That'll be young Joffrey. Joffrey was one of the few men on the island who never really got credited for anything. One of those men that InGen CEO John Hammond constantly referred to as our delightfully expendable workforce. Moldon nodded curtly to young Joffrey, making sure to maintain eye contact for slightly longer than was socially acceptable. Joffrey smiled back coquettishly and gave him an almost effeminate wink. Wiping his mouth slightly, Moldon once more adjusted himself and went back to surveying the surrounding area, trying very hard not to think about how long it had been since he'd given his rifle a good cocking. After what seemed like an eternity atop the platform, but was really only a couple of seconds, give or take a second or two, a mighty roar sounded out across the acres of thickly carpeted wilderness. One by one in the distance, trees began to crash to the floor as if some massive reptilian behemoth was charging towards them. About bloody time, Moldon thought to himself, as the bulldozer finally emerged from the overgrowth, pushing a large steel box before it. Quickly, he motioned to the other workers to help him get the enclosure door open. As the bulldozer pulled up to the side and lowered the crate with a loud thump, "All right now," he shouted. "Pushers, move in. Loading team, move it. Come on, come on." The movement of the crate, however, had clearly angered its occupant. A mighty shriek and a series of loud, high-pitched roars emanated from the slats on either side of the crate as a large, yellowish, and distinctly non-human eye peered out menacingly. The creature snapped and growled and began to hurl itself against the side of the cage, startling the workers, who retreated back a few steps. Now this, Moldon reflected, this was more like it. Angry, dangerous animals wanting nothing more than to tear him apart. This was the kind of job he could get his teeth into. Whether it was due to the previous 6 months or so of utter boredom, or whether it was some other dark impulse, Moldon never knew. But almost without thinking, he covertly loosened the bolts on the door to the cage, taking great care to ensure no one saw him do so. "All right, steady," he said to the other workers. "Get back in there now. Push. Get back in there. Don't let her know you're afraid." Gingerly, the other workers approached the cage, with great effort managed to push it up against the open slot on the side of the enclosure. As it thudded against the side, a green light flicked on, indicating that contact had been made. Oh, how Moldon longed for contact. He smiled to himself. As long as the bolts on that cage door were secure, no amount of throwing itself against the side will allow the animal to escape. Quickly, he checked to make sure they were sufficiently loose. "Well locked," he cried, "loading team. Step away." Joffrey raised the gate. Quickly, Joffrey clambered on top of the cage and began to do as he was told. He knew all too well what manner of creature they were dealing with, and he didn't want to waste any time getting it securely behind those 12-foot thick concrete walls lined with high-voltage electric fences. As he leaned forward to grab the gate release, however, the creature made its move. With a loud shriek, it threw itself against the panel next to the bolts Moldon had loosened, ripping the door from its hinges and knocking the cage back, sending Joffrey crashing onto the unforgiving jungle floor below and jarring every bone in his body. Howling in triumph, the creature shot out a brown scaly limb and sunk a vicious saber-like claw into the workman's fleshy ankle, tearing through the muscle and bone and locking itself firmly in place. Joffrey screamed at the top of his lungs as he was dragged forcefully back inside the cage, powerless to resist the creature's superior strength. Joffrey howled in terror as his efforts to stay put failed. Unable to break the creature's hold, he cracked his head brutally against the side of the cage and lost all ability to resist as his senses became groggy. A rank odor of decaying meat and feces lined the air of the cage, and it was all he could do to suppress his gag reflex, the way his gym teacher had taught him. As his head cleared slightly, he was able to make out the dreadful beast, which had just snarled him, standing almost 8 feet high, with mottled brown and green skin and rows of curved, serrated teeth, was Velociraptor Enteroptus, a killing machine of almost unsurpassed intelligence, lethality, and sexual appetite. Its long forearms ended in 5 muscular digits, each sporting an intimidating-looking claw. It leered at him wickedly, and Joffrey knew his end was nigh. Strangely enough, though, he didn't really mind. While Joffrey would have preferred not to die, this prehistoric Jack the Ripper was somehow the most beautiful creature he had ever seen. From her lustrous amber eyes to her graceful prehensile tail, all the way to her muscular thighs and smooth, curvy foot claws, it would be an honor to be ravaged by such a goddess. complete disregard for his mutilated ankle and gashed open head, he reached out and smiled at the creature as she reared up and opened her jaws. The velociraptor had parted her jaws and looked about to strike, but suddenly she seemed to stop as if unsure of herself. Joffrey was confused. Why hadn't this hot creature's babe mauled him like the filthy descendant of a wretched shrew-like thing that he was? Why was he not being lovingly absorbed by the digestive system of this perfect carrion-scented Aphrodite? Almost as if he dared not speculate, he glanced up at her, still expecting the final strike that would end his sexually confused, mammalian existence, and saw at once that it would not come. Her eyes were still marked by a ferocious hunger, but it was not for shredded meat. She seemed to savor. She clearly wanted the meat intact. Joffrey couldn't believe his luck. Slowly she backed away from him, then quietly turned around so her bird-like hips were on full display mere inches from his face. From this angle, he could see her smooth, hairless slit. As he began to drool, she started to shake her hips from side to side seductively, delicately spraying him with gallons upon gallons of dinosaur sex pheromones she had in some gland that all the velociraptors had, but that didn't get fossilized with the rest of them because it was too soft somehow. Cautiously at first, lest he somehow alarm her or turn her off, Joffrey began to lightly rub the area around her velocigina with his chin, nuzzling the rough, pebble-like folds of skin surrounding it with his tongue. The creature howled with a terrifying primordial delight and thrust herself back against Joffrey's mouth, knocking out his front teeth and ramming his lower jaw deep inside her.
Oh my god.
Joffrey whispered seductively as he continued to work his magic on her with his mouth parts, delicately teasing her harsh sandpaper-like clitoris as he did so. The velociraptor continued to bellow and howl and echo her savage predatorial joy across the construction site as Joffrey brought her halfway to climax. With one exaggerated movement, she threw her head violently to one side, dislodging Joffrey's lower jaw from her deep, hot minge and hammering him against the side of the cage. Winded, he collapsed to the floor. His face a brutal-looking mess of blood, bone, flesh, dinosaur sex pheromones, and primeval vaginal juices. The velociraptor was a merciless predator, but she was not a selfish lover. It was time to recuperate. As Joffrey lay battered on the cage floor, barely able to move, she approached him and lightly rested her perfectly shaped foot on his crotch. Even though his dislocated muscle, she could feel the bulge. She grinned, as all velociraptors are pretty much forced to do because of their bone structure. And with one deft flick of her curved toe claw, she tore through the lining of his pants and exposed his engorged, throbbing member. Joffrey mumbled with ecstasy through his maimed features as the creature appraised him. She was mildly disappointed at the lack of insemination barbs on his manhood, but she had come too far now, invested too much time to stop the process this close to completion. Wrapping her tail around his waist, she pulled him to his feet and slammed herself back against his erect cock, moaning wickedly as it pushed apart the sides of her opening and entered her. Little bubbles of pleasure formed in the red-black foam on Joffrey's mouth as she forced herself further back, taking him deep inside her. The velociraptor was grinding and bucking back against Joffrey with terrifying savagery now, and she could feel the warmth beginning to build up in her nether regions as his rock-hard dick slammed in and out of her orifice. Fervently, she rocked against the side of the cage, ignoring Joffrey's impassioned gurgling noises as she brought herself closer and closer to a meteoric climax. Finally, the raptor could take it no more. Squealing as if she intended to drown out all other sounds that had ever been made by anything in the history of ever, she came hard and fast, her vaginal walls constricting around Joffrey like a vice, as wave after wave of putrid velociraptor love Tabasco squirted everywhere, dousing the floor and walls of the cage in a layer of horrible half an inch thick, Joffrey screamed in agony as his frail, warm-blooded member was crushed by this merciless barrage and tried desperately to pull out of her, but it was too late. In a final act of climax, she spun around again, taking him with her and cracking his spine in two. Acting on pure instinct, she sank her powerful jaws into the side of his skull and bit down hard, ripping his head clean in half and scattering flesh and blood everywhere. As her teeth entered his brain, they triggered his pleasure and pain senses, sending him at once into the most disturbingly intense agony a human being can possibly experience and bringing him to such heights of ecstasy as humankind can only dream of. Then he died. The end. What a Story. Root Her by Michael Collins. The story was essentially just a fucking horny velociraptor wanting to get laid. By Joffrey. Young Joffrey. Who found her beautiful.
The one who wanted to get laid was a woman, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
At least he like made it happen, you know.
And what was Joffrey?
Joffrey was a human. You didn't realize.
I was thinking he was a velociraptor.
No, Joffrey's a velociraptor.
No,
No.
Joffrey's a human.
Joffrey's the human, the velociraptor's the one that wanted to get laid, right?
Yeah,
Velociraptor's a
yeah.
velociraptor.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
That's rough.
I don't know why the raptor is so just
Horny?
yeah.
Hey, man. Everything's gotta have some love.
She bit down
I
on
think it
his
was
head and
locked
killed
into a
him.
cage.
Wow.
I guess it was locked in a cage.
So, Joe, what would you rate the story?
Would you recommend it to a friend?
Yes.
No.
No.
Ever. I wouldn't recommend any fan fiction unless that's what you're into, which
Would you make any changes?
plenty. There's plenty I could change about this story.
What's the one thing you could change?
Yeah,
The
one thing.
There's plenty.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we want-
more
we
than
want-
What's the one? What's
What's
the
the
one
one
thing?
thing that I would change.
Yeah.
Joffrey. Who the fuck finds a velociraptor attractive? Like what?
Yeah. I don't know. He needs to see a doctor.
Yeah. I think it's a little too late for that. He's dead.
Could use a doctor. While I was-
I mean, hey, at least he died happy. He got laid. He didn't finish, but he got laid.
But there was foam too.
There was foam, yeah. Was he foaming or was she
Could you
foaming?
indicate where the foam was
That's a
coming from?
concern.
I would
man.
assume it would be from the velociraptor's lovely vaginal
Whoa.
juices. And then the fucking
Yeah.
hormonal shit that she sprayed all over him.
Oh my god, I
That
forgot
sounds
about
lit.
What are you gonna do?
So yeah, that's the fanfic we had for you guys today.
For this week?
For this week. Can't wait for the next one. Until then, I'll be here. If you guys want to send in some of your favorite fan fictions, feel free, because that's kind of an open offer, I guess. And yeah, see you in the next one.
Counting sheep once again, hiding from the wolf under my bed.